according to this, we are live. Just double check everything's good. Yeah. We're live. Hello, everybody. Hope everybody's having a lovely evening. Hello, Summit. How are you? Ready to see some trees being painted? So these are Kurnoth Hunters. Okay, the big, strong, tough boys of the Sylvaneth. Very, very cool. I've got 3 sets of these. They come with 3 different weapon choices. They come with swords, they come with scythes, and they come with bow and arrows. I've already done 3 bow and arrows and 3 with scythes, so these ones are with swords. Paint trees, yes. And in fact, these ones, I've already got like a little theme. I'm going to go for like an autumnal inspired look. Sorts of oranges, reds, yellows. Because so far I've done cherry blossom and I've done poison dart frog, which is like that colour I showed you yesterday where it was dark and then really, really vibrant. So I'm going for more of an autumnal look with this. And then for the swirls and spirals you can see, I'm going to go in with a blue for those. Normally I go in with a green, but I mean, I'm really liking the blues at the minute. So let's get into it, shall we? So to begin with, I'm using Thunder Brown. And this is one of those colours where you don't need to use a little bit of it, you need to use quite a lot, because I'm going to be covering, quite literally, the entire figure. I have 3 Kurnoth Hunters to paint today, so I'm going to at least be basing all 3 of them and detailing at least 1 of them. Hopefully not 2. But anyway, how is everybody? How are you, Summit? Hope work yesterday wasn't too terrible. And maybe periodically muting myself at times for 2 reasons. 1, because I'm full of a cold, and 2, because my neighbours have decided now is the appropriate time to start drilling. So if they start drilling again, I'll quickly mute the mic so you don't have to hear that. With this first step, this is the reason why... Hiya! This is the reason why I mentioned to you before something about potentially Sylvaneth being a good start for you. Because as you can see, I'm not having to be very precise with this colour. I'm just slapping the colour all over. Yes, they're brand new, they've just moved in. And they've decided that, bear in mind they've been basically silent all day, that now at 6 o'clock is the best time to start drilling holes in the wall. And as you know, we have a lot of cats. They have 6. We have 4. Yet to see the cats, but apparently there are 6 of them. It's quite impressive. As I was saying, like with this, you can see I'm not having to be very precise with the paint. I'm just making sure I'm getting it into all the spots so that there's no grey visible. You could very easily just use a brown spray paint to do this, but we don't have a brown spray paint, we only have a black spray paint. And I think sometimes when you go in with a black spray paint, it can obviously, you then have to go in with extra layers if you want to brighten stuff up a bit more. But it does mean it's less work. And black and brown are a little bit more forgiving than grey and brown. What I'm using is just like a really cheap paintbrush. This isn't even like one from Amazon or anything like that. This is literally, I think we picked up from like a magazine shop, like WH Smith's. Had to pick up a little pack of them for I think £2 or £3. Really inexpensive. We picked them up originally for our Amazon parade boards, because we didn't want to ruin any of our nicer brushes. But for projects like this, like I said, where I don't have to be too careful with what I'm painting, I can just be a bit more rough and heavy-handed with the brush. Normally I go for like a slightly darker brown, but I wanted to try something a little bit different today, and so far I'm liking this brown. There we go. In this one today, I'm also be showing some dry brushing, which I only showed you briefly in a previous one. But for this figure, for these figures, for me personally, dry brushing is quite important. But it also shows you how quickly you can kind of add detail to something without having to focus too much on like highlighting and things like that, like I've had to do with my previous figures. You can still absolutely go in and add highlights to these, but the way I'm going to be doing that is just by differentiating in colours. So for example, like a dark orange, lighter orange, stuff like that. So it'll be more to do with adding dimension more so than highlights. It'd be more about blending colours together so they're a bit more seamless. I'll do all 3 bases, and then whilst the next layer dries, I'll move on then to the next figure. So by the time we've painted all 3 boys, the first one will be dry 100%, and I can start dry brushing more or less straight away. Getting under his feet. Under his feet between his little claws. If you wanted to make like less paint go a longer way, you could just use more water. But I tend to find whenever I've used more water, it takes a little bit longer for it to dry. So, and you also have to I tend to find you have to go in with more layers that way. Which is fine, because obviously just make sure you're making sure you're going in and not missing any spots. But sometimes going in with slightly less water is the better bet if you want to get fuller coverage with less layers. But if you are going to get Citadel paints, Summit, then just make sure when you're going through and using them, you are diluting your paint. Because one, you'll run out very quickly if you don't, and two, you'll find sometimes they're a bit harder to control with without some form of medium mixed in with them, like aka water. and they can dry out on your brush as you're using them. So to make sure you're always diluting your paints. Like certain paints you don't have to dilute, like the technical paints, just because they're designed to be a thicker base and they obviously have textures added in them. But anything that's labelled like a base, a layer, or anything like that, which I'll just show you an example, like on here, you can see it just says base above the title. And then here it says layer. Anything like that, just make sure you're diluting it. So I'm leaving his sword free of paint because that's been painted a lighter colour. Just means less work for me to have to do later. There's a few splotches of colour in it, but that's not too bad. Just means I have to add an extra layer of paint later when it comes to those sections. Also going to hold on to so I can flip and move around the figure, just to make sure all the edges are covered. Apologies for my voice as well, I've developed a cough as of last night for some reason. Physically completely fine, just a cough and sounding a bit worse for wear. Makes recording a bit interesting. There we go, so that's the first one already based. So we've been streaming for 10 minutes, 12 minutes. I'm already done with the base coat on one figure. This is our next boy. Definitely cold season. When I left work at 6 AM, -3. Jeez, I think we woke up to -2 today. And then we had snow, a small flurry of snow this morning. Stopped after about 10 minutes, but there was enough, it was cold enough for a little flurry of snow. It's typical though, because I've just had a cold, an actual cold, where I felt rubbish for about a week. And then just as I got better, I went to bed last night and a cough developed and I woke up with a sore throat. It's like, oh, typical. Just as I thought I was getting better. Do you split out and separate new paints and dilute straight away, or just as you paint? I dilute them as I paint with them, so they in the pots I leave them completely like undiluted, just because they aren't the biggest pots, like container wise. If I was to add more water to this, it'd be a bit of a pain. So I just decant how much I want to use and then dilute it in my palette, which I've got a wet palette for, so that helps as well, because it just helps with retaining a bit of moisture anyway, because then I don't have to use as much paint direct from the pot, and I just place less onto my palette to begin with. Just taking my slippers off. I was wondering why my feet were uncomfortable. Sitting cross-legged on a bench, slippers on. On average, like on my palette, I will take out a little bit of paint and then maybe add 1 or 2 drops of water to that on the palette. And unless I'm using a lot of it like I am with this, because obviously it's the main base colour, then that's all I kind of tend to need to use. But in this case, because the main body of these is all brown, I'm using a little bit more paint. But so far we've been streaming every night this week from 6 PM and it's been going quite well. Already done, this is already our third project of the week. And I've still got I've got a Middle-earth one to do for Saturday's video. I'm painting Helm Hammerhand, which I'll just grab him for you so you can have like a little sneak peek. He's not painted yet, but Helm Hammerhand on horseback. And then him on foot, which is very, very tiny, especially compared to my Kurnoth Hunter. But those two are going to be Saturday's video this week. As I'm quite a fast painter, so I'll probably start recording and painting some of these tonight. And then finish those off tomorrow. So this week you will have seen some 40k through the streams, some Fantasy Sigmar through the streams, and then some Middle-earth through videos. So you get to see kind of all walks of Warhammer this week through the channel, which is pretty cool. But yeah, he's a really, really cool figure. It's his second release. The original one we have... Oh, why are you struggling to focus? There we go. Earlier on this week, we had the very first figure that came out is, I don't know if you guys have watched the War of the Rohirrim, but there's the scene where Helm is kind of outside of Helm's Deep, and he's just in like a tunic with his arms out, all muscles out, and that's the original one we have for Helm. So they gave us one on horseback and with armour, which is really, really cool. But also, as you saw, the size difference is quite dramatic between the Middle-earth figures and these, and therefore they require a lot more concentration and a lot of hours. So I think they'll be painted over the next 2 or 3 days in between projects on the house and streams. Safe to say it's going to be a busy couple of days, but such is life. Whilst I'm off this week, I might as well use all the hours up. Because as soon as I go on maternity leave in 2 weeks' time, this is what I'll be doing. I'm going to be having nothing but free time to use. So, at least for the first few weeks, whilst still waiting for him to come into the world. So, kind of set myself like a little daily challenge almost to see how much I can do in a day. We're trying to get all the DIY stuff done this week so that that's all done. So for the next 2 weeks whilst I'm still working, it's just going to be me focusing on Mondays and Fridays streams, and then Wednesdays and Saturdays videos for this, in addition to a Friday lore video on Warhammer and a Monday lore video on Tolkien. So I do have time for sleep. At some point, eventually, there is sleep in there. But it kind of helps that what I've kind of done is pre-written scripts all the way between like now and the end of January, beginning of February. So that, hang on a moment, my neighbour's decided to do some drilling. There we go, I think they stopped for a minute. But yeah, as I was saying, I've like pre-written my scripts between now and beginning of February, so that over the next few weeks, whilst I'm off and we're waiting on little guy to make his arrival, I can just go ahead and record all of those, so I don't have to sit around trying to record with a newborn crying in the background, and also to allow me the time to get used to obviously that new role in general, and taking the strain off of myself for doing an additional thing. So I'll kind of be pre-recording, pre-editing, pre-uploading all of those, scheduling their uploads, so that I can just kind of make sure they're out on their scheduled days and just focus on him. So it's busy now, so it can be calm later. How is everybody today? Is everyone okay today? Glad to hear it. So just having a little sip of tea and a little break there. As you can see, this is our third hunter. The other two are now done, so well, for their bases. So we've got this one to paint. By the time I've done this one, the first one will be dry, or dry enough that I can go in and do some dry brushing. The time-consuming part with these, personally, if you're using the dry brushing technique, really is the detailing afterwards, in my opinion. There we go. So I was looking around last night, like I said, for some research purposes for which theme I wanted to go with, and it didn't take me very long. I just popped onto Reddit in the end and found absolutely loads of designs for Kurnoth Hunters. Apologies, blowing my nose again. Yeah, it's currently predicted we might have a bit more snow again tonight. Wouldn't surprise me. We had rain last night, so the snow was not going to settle this morning, even no matter how brief it was. The ground was still too wet. But it hasn't snowed, it hasn't rained all day, so maybe tonight, if it does snow, we might wake up to a bit of snow in the morning. Would be quite nice. Cats were sat at the window watching it. They were fascinated. Two of them have never seen snow before, so they were very bewildered. So these were the old wood elves. So these belong to Order in Age of Sigmar, which is at the fantasy side of Warhammer. So they redid the wood elves for Age of Sigmar and they made them into these trees. I think you can still get wood elves in Old World. I'd have to double check and verify, but I do think you can. But as far as Sigmar goes, these are now the wood elves. And they just took it to a whole new level and just made them trees. They belong to Order, so technically they are the good guys. But the reality is they're only as good as you expect them to be. In the sense of, as long as you don't mess with their forests or cut down what's sacred to them, then they're good with you. But if you try to, even if you do it indirectly, then you are the enemy, whether you belong to Order, whether you belong to the good guys or not. They will not take lightly to their forests being cut down or burnt down or anything like that. Traditionally, these are acts, obviously, of places like chaos and death and destruction. Most of Order kind of knows by now not to really mess with the forests, because as they are trees, these guys come in abundance. And they don't have the same human emotion as humans do, so they're not going to have any empathy for you. So the planet these guys would come from is called Gyron. Hello, getting the big battle boxes. We will be, yeah, like right now I've already got this one in a spearhead, and I'm currently building it in, and I also have it in a warcry. But we will be expanding. We've currently got loads of the warcry box set, so we've got a lot of figures that I haven't seen before. So but the perk of using these as a warcry set for me is I'm going to be mixing some figures from my Sylvaneth and some figures from what I'm doing now. So I've got some Spite Revenants, and they are in that Cherry Blossom theme I've been showing you guys, which is like the pink and the flowers, and these guys are going to be in autumnal trees. So but once we're going into our local store on Saturday to try and pick up one of the Kill Team box sets, if it's still available to us at that point. Fingers crossed it's still available. Sorry, it's another sip of tea. In many ways, like if you're trying to build a warcry, like once you understand how to play it as well, like if anybody is interested in learning warcry, it's better if you already have a lot of the spearheads, because then you've got figures that you won't find in the, blowing it across the table at myself, you've got figures that you won't find in any of the warcry sets, and as long as you can check the compendiums and check that they are ones you can use, which you'd be surprised how many of the spearhead ones you can use, then you're more or less good to go. At that point, you just make a points army of 1,000 and go from there. So on my phone, I actually have a list of who would be what and how much they're kind of worth, just to give you an idea or an understanding. So a Kurnoth Hunter is about 185 points. And then you've got little Dryads, which are about 210, and Spite Revenants, which are about 100 each. So, and I also have something called an Arch Revenant, which I've painted on my channel in the past. Together, those figures make up 1,000 points, or just shy of 1,000 points. I think I've got like 10 points left over. And that's enough for a warcry. Yeah, I do love my ferocious trees. I do think they are quite cool. Not just visually, but as an idea, I enjoy them a lot as well. As you saw yesterday signed, I have Alariel, the Ever Queen, to paint for these. And she's like their main hero for the Sylvaneths. So they all rule. She rules over them. She's kind of the only being as such that the Sylvaneth will listen to. Alariel, the Ever Queen. Which I don't blame them for. I'd listen to Alariel. Yes, we've been streaming 40 minutes and I've already base coated all 3 of these. So they're not. This part is not the hard part. So I can still see a few tiny wet patches on this one. So I'm just gonna go in over any parts where I can see some more white. And I'll just show you some of the paints we've got. We're going to be using for this scheme today. Okay. So as I said at the very beginning of the stream, this will be an autumnal theme. So for that, I'm going to need obviously a lot of oranges. So I'm going to push this out of the way for a second. And I have quite the collection of oranges, yellows, reds. Quite a few. So all of those colours, the oranges, the reds, and the shade that I've got there are all going to be used in today. Well, not sorry, just today, but on this figure. For any metallics, I'm going to use a brass colour, which is called Screaming Bell, which is beautiful. It's a proper reddy bronze. For the first coat of dry brushing, I'm going to go in with dry Sylvaneth bark. So when it comes to picking up these paints signed, if it says dry, then it's designed for dry brushing. Good, I'm glad. Have you decided if you're going to go for some Wood Elves or if you're going to go for some Skaven, or are you just still deciding? But yeah, any paints that say dry in them are designed for dry brushing. But you can still use other colours, which is what I'll be using on top of that. Because then I also have blues. These blues are mostly going to be used for their weapons. The base of the swords is going to be in Blue Horror, which is this white blue. And over that I'm going to go in with the technical paint called, I think it's called Nihela Oxide. I can't really pronounce it. But this one is going to go over the top of that. Yeah, have a good long look. You've got options. You might come out with multiple things after that, at this rate. And then I've got potentially Lothern Blue to also dry brush with, or Iron Blue. I'm just trying to decide between these two on top of the Sylvaneth bark, which one would be the best. Just to be the most vibrant, I'm thinking potentially I might go for the darker one of the two. I'm just going to show you some different examples of brushes I use for dry brushing. So this one has seen better days, so don't judge the bristles on this one. But this is a Citadel's dry brush, to be exact. So this is a dry brush with short, dense bristles, designed to be buffed across the surface. But then for smaller, hard to reach areas, I have a makeup brush. Really simple, but because this is designed for eyeshadow, it is super dense and super packed. And that's really good for getting into hard to reach areas as well. And because it's a bit smaller, it's a bit more it's a bit more controlled for me. And then I have slightly less dense, but still the same shape as the dry brush before. It's called a Master Stroke Craft and Decorating brush. And again, I think this is just like a cheap set off of Amazon. So Amazon is a bit of a godsend for this hobby, just because you don't have to spend a fortune on brushes. I'm just going to also show you so there's brushes that we've got, Summit, the smaller brushes, these ones from Amazon. This is essentially the Citadel's paint equivalent. This is one of their layer brushes, which you can see is super fine tip, but because it hasn't got this like bulbous bit here, I find these ones actually to be a little bit harder to hold on to. They do go smaller than this, and you could also get like a starter brush, which is just basically used for just about everything except for dry brushing. But yeah, that's the Citadel brush equivalent, just to show we do have other brushes and have used other brushes in the past. We just genuinely prefer the Amazon ones. Okie dokie. Let's grab our boy again. I think I'm actually going to start with our cheap and cheerful one for dry brushing here. And need some kitchen roll, our brush, and some dry paint. And for this, you're just going to dip the tip of the brush into the paint. I tend to try and wipe off whatever excess I can into the pot, just because I'm not wasting too much, because you're going to be doing this with it. You basically want it so there's hardly anything left on the brush. And then from there, you're going to sweep it across the figure. Because this is a light brown, it's not going to have as such a vivid effect as another colour. In fact, I might go in with Autumnal Grey, just so you can see the colour a bit better, and also I'm going over the top with blue anyway. So this is going to be covered up, but it just makes it a little bit more noticeable for camera. Because with these lights, you can see it a tiny bit, but it's not super noticeable. So the other reason why I'm going in quite heavy on the face with this is because this is going to be faded, so it's an orangey tone. So you can see I've gone quite heavy there with the grey. And I'm going to brush off even more. And then using whatever's left, I'm going to go over his arms, his shoulders. So I'm going to go over this with blue as well. And oranges. It just plucks the little details back out. There we go. Just because with dry brushing, you can have a tendency to get a little bit heavy-handed. You just want to make sure you're supporting the figure whilst you're dry brushing, because otherwise you might brush too hard and then risk breaking your character off of his base, which is the last thing you want. As you can see, he has now been dry brushed. Just going to get in down here around his neck. And now I'm going to pick a orange to go over the top of this with. And I think I'm going to go for squig orange for that. I've now just switched to the Citadel's brush. Now his face is looking already a little bit more menacing. Already starting to look a lot more autumnal. But dry brushing is actually my preferred technique for any of the Sylvaneth, just because I don't want it to look too perfect, because at the end of the day, these are trees. Nature is not designed to be perfect. There we go. that's him currently. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint his sword, and whilst that dries, I'll then move on to the leaves and stuff on top of his head. So we're going to go with the blue now. So we're going in with some blue horror. This is like barely noticeable, but that's kind of the point more than anything. This blue is to base the technical paint on top of. There we go. It's a very, very, very pale blue. It's like a blue, almost white blue. But that will go really, really well with the technical paint over the top of it. Now to start picking out some of these tiny little leaves. So I'm going to go in with some Wild Rider Red, some Kurnoth Orange, and some Avaland Sunset for these leaves. I'm going to start with Wild Rider Red though, because it's red technically on the pot, but it is like a dark orange. Quite a vibrant orange actually. I'm going in with just a small brush, just because these leaves are tiny. And there are leaves like all over this guy's body, so I'm just going to be picking out certain ones until I'm happy with the amount of colour payoff. Has anybody got any plans for this evening then? Eventually every single one of these leaves is going to be filled in, just with varying colours. Next we're going to go in with some Avalanche Sunset. I mean, aside from watching me. But if you've got nothing else planned, that's fine too. Just playing some video games. Oh, anything interesting at the moment, Ballistic? I don't know, Summit, you have work. Just WoW. Well, still good though. I think Mr. Nerd is quite a big fan of WoW. So he's played that quite a bit. At the moment he is on... At the moment he mostly is in the mood for playing some Battlefield 6 and some Guild Wars. Focusing on Guild Wars 2 predominantly at the moment. But then over on his channel he plays games like Manor and he also plays games like Titan Quest and stuff like that because he's really into his Greek mythology. And then Path of Exile and Diablo. So quite a lot of good content over there if you're interested in any of those games as well. Now I'm going to go in with Lugganath Orange. And I might even go in with some Methystone Red as well. But we shall see. I'll see how it looks when I've added all the oranges. And then see if I want to add some darker red as well. Or whether or not I want to just stick to this. It's gonna be like nights now, like, 'cause obviously I've done a stream every single night this week. I'm gonna go back to my normal working routine next week. And so be like, and I feel like I'm missing out on doing something. And then realising it's just because I'm not streaming. But of course, once I'm on leave, these will be frequent again. Until January, and then January they will stop. Except for maybe the odd periodic one here and there, but they won't necessarily be long ones. Depends on what's going on. And if my human child allows me to. Because if he's demanding attention, then he's going to be getting the attention. Like I said, a lot of the videos will be pre-recorded, and the perk of the content videos, the Wednesdays and the Saturday videos, is that all I need really is anywhere between 10 to 15 minutes of silence just to record audio. And then whilst I'm recording footage, because I mute any of the audio coming through on the actual footage, I can be as loud as I need to be and move around as much as I need to. I'm liking how this is looking so far. His eyes and things like that are going to be filled in with blue. So it's not going to be just autumnal colours, it's going to be autumnal colours and then blue. Could have easily gone for red, but decided to be a bit too much of one colour. So he's coming together quite nicely. I'm going to back in with the yellow now and pick out a few more. Thank you. Yeah, this is autumn's my favourite season. Very typical white girl of me, of course. But it is, so it's nice to do a little theme. And also I haven't done this yet. I haven't done anything autumn based. So it gives me opportunity to do something slightly different. Thank you very much. Because his hands are holding his sword, I'm not going to do too much to them, but for his claws on his foot, I might paint those toes, give him a little pedicure. I'm just deciding whether or not I stick with the 3 I've got, or whether I use red for that. What do you guys think? Because I think both orange and red would look cool here. It'll be one of these two. But it's like a mini vote. What do you guys think? Red? I think I'm feeling red more so. Colour schemes once used for Tyranids. Ooh. I feel like that would work. This would work really, really well for Tyranids, actually. We're going to give him a manicure or pedicure of Methystone Red. Minus the leaves, yeah, I get that. Yeah, already I like this. And with this I can go in later and add a highlight of a more vibrant red, just to kind of... Very true. I think I'm going to go in with red for his toes, and I might actually do orange for the top part, for the contrast for the highlight. And so they do look quite cool on there. The perk of doing this is that traditionally these are the type of ones that I would do whilst kind of sat with Mr. Nerd, just like watching a movie or something like that. We have little kind of trays that we can sit on the sofa and paint with. Oh, throw them across the table, I don't know. Can sit on the sofas and kind of paint. So it's quite nice to just do it on a stream because it's still pretty relaxing and chilled. One more toe. And what I might do, because there's a few little spots where I've got a few leaves, what I'll do is I'll just take that red just across a few of them, just to fully tie the pieces together. There we go. Now I'm going to move back onto his blade. Which is this oxidizing paint here I'm going to be using. Pardon me. Sorry about that, my voice is really not the best today. This is originally used to kind of create a rust effect, but I think it will also create quite a cool effect on the sword as well. So it's like a sea foamy greeny blue colour. See that bluish colour kind of contrasts really nicely against the autumnal colours. Once again, my cats are being very respectful. I have one of them staring at me at the moment as if she's asking for attention, but she's also still not jumping up on the table, so she's being very respectful. Right. Now I'm going to go in with my smallest brush, which is basically a couple of strands of bristles. And I'm going to go in with the Arran blue, I think, just because I think it's going to be the nicest contrast. Such a lovely blue, actually. I love the blue shades that Citadel has. There aren't very many blue shades from them that I don't have, and I think I've used every single one of them at least once, minimum. Maybe that should be the next one. Maybe I should do something that's completely blue themed. Can just see that blue in his eye there. It's using his eyes, in his spirals, everywhere. This will show up a lot better. Let's see if I can bring it any closer. A little bit. This will show up a lot better when I take photos afterwards to show you what I've done today. Because his trees I almost always end up going for green to fill this in, so it's quite nice to go for something just a little different. There we go. There's a big old spiral in his forehead, another one in his other shoulder, and then in his core, right in the middle of the figure. You can kind of see it's a little bit shadowy because it's underneath the sword. I'm painting that completely blue as well. I think a couple of my cats are potentially deciding to play. I can hear little bangs going around me. I think because I'm streaming and their dad is preoccupied, they're just like, oh, we'll entertain ourselves. Which I'm sure means and play with the loudest toys imaginable. If they start playing with loud toys, I will get up and sort it, but until then, they are fine. There we go. See the spiral in his forehead, in his arm, and to his other shoulder. Having a look. There we go. He's got some in his leg. I can imagine most of you guys will obviously be into your 40k lore. Tomorrow's video on my lore channel is going to be on Sanguinius, so if you want to see any of that, then just make sure you hop on over there tomorrow. At 5:30 that will go live. Just painting that core that I was talking about blue. These come together quite nicely. So that's him so far. I think I'm going to move on to a few little highlights now. So using some more of that Lugganath orange, I'm going to go ahead and just add some highlights to certain areas that I've dry brushed, just to define the edges a bit more. Just like on edges like so. And it has like these horns, so I'm just gonna incorporate that orange into those a bit more. Yeah, I think that orange is quite a nice little touch. This is so much less highlights as it is for this part. It's just bringing out detail, because on the figure are these little vines. So I'm just going in and bringing those out. Just because they're a nice extra touch. And I don't want them to get really lost in there. Little twist around so I can make sure I'm getting both sides. I'm going to take everything on board that we've kind of learnt this week in regards to streaming. So like we've moved the camera to my right hand side so that I'm not blocking it as much. We've brought the camera closer so you can see more detail. If I was doing like a more intense detailed highlighting video, this would be closer. But because I'm also picking out edges, it's just close enough that you can see it on this camera without me having to go any closer than this. Hope you guys can see all that clearly. And I'm going to lay him on the front and do the exact same to his back here. What do you guys think of the figure so far then? Are we liking it? Okie dokie. Thank you. I think it would be an ample opportunity to, it would be a bit of a loss if I didn't highlight these vines. because that already looks a lot better. Having a feel of his sword, seeing if that's dry, which it is. So that's his sword now. And we're going to go back in with some dry brushing, but now we're going to use our makeup brush. And using that same paint I used for his eyes, I'm just going to brush it over the tip and the base of the sword. I'm just gonna very gently, because like I said, I don't want to risk breaking the sword. Just because then you get this slightly more blended look. And then I'll take some blue horror again. Again, blotting off any excess. As this is a makeup brush, it's obviously designed to hold a lot of pigment, so with a makeup brush you kind of have to be a bit more careful. And I'm just dragging that in certain areas. So I can see it's lighter. Or where I want it to be lighter again. And you get this really cool blended effect. Because this guy actually doesn't have anything on him that would class as a anything that requires any metallics. I'm not going to use any metallics on this one, but I will go in now with that squig orange and highlight his toes. Which I'll just do by just dragging my brush, using the side of it. Just down the center of each toe. Because it's just like the tiniest bit of definition. I'm just picking out some Lothern blue as well, which was the lighter of the two blues. Picking up that on my brush. And then essentially I'm just making sure it's not too overloaded so I don't risk going over the edges. And then just the most central parts of where I put that blue inside all of the spirals. Just touching that into those, just to kind of add a little bit of highlight there as well. Just because it makes it ever so slightly brighter. And then through these little like holes and crevices in his arms, I'm just going in with the lighter one. And for the spiral that's in his chest, I'm just dragging it over the edges. That's pretty much it for the first Kurnoth Hunter. I'm just going to go in with some Screaming Skull, which is this shade here, because right by his toes there is a skull. So I'm going to paint over that. Using Screaming Skull to paint a skull feels pretty apt. Probably only going to go for another 15 minutes or so today. So this will be a shorter stream of 2 hours, just because I'm not feeling 100% today. But in that time, you will have then still seen an entire Kurnoth Hunter painted, because once this skull dries, I'm going to move on to the rest of his base. Which, of course, as it is a tree, I'm going in with Sterland Mud Technical Paint, which is one of the ones you do not have to dilute. This one is completely fine as it is, because it is a textured paint. It is full of grits. If you try and dilute this, you can dilute it, but you're just going to lose the effect and end up needing to use more in the end. So it's better off to just go in with the product as is. Whilst the base dries, I'm just going to go in with a few lighter shades on the leaves just to highlight the centres of those. And that'll be pretty much it for today. There we go. Because technical paints I find can sometimes mess up your brushes a little bit. You're better off going in with these cheaper brushes. Cheap and cheerful, they do the trick and you don't waste a load of money. And now for each leaf, so for the orange leaves I'm going to use yellow as the highlight. For the red leaves I'm going to use orange. And for the orange I'm going to use lighter orange. There we go. All I'm doing is just going through and touching from the bottom and just adding a tiny, tiny yellow centre. For the yellow, I'm going to use white to do the core. This is White Scar. Again, like when I do the photos later, this will be a little bit more noticeable. How did your raid go last night, Ballistic? How did it go? Just gonna go back over Screaming Skull again on the skull, just give it an extra coat. There we go, that's now fully covered. And I'm going to go in with Wild Rider Red for any of the red leaves for the highlight. It's just the tiniest amount of each one. Grabbing a shade paint, which I'll be using to go over the skull. I think for the outside edge, I will be using probably either Methystone or Wild Rider Red again. Which one do you think I should use for the outside edge? For the skull, I'm going to go in with Seraphim Sepia. Sepia. It's a nice dirty brown colour, but that works quite well for a skull. Just makes the skull look a little bit older. Showing this is a old victim of the Kurnoth Hunter. I think for the outside edge I'm going to go in with Wild Rider Red. I have decided generally what I'd like to do, just because it's a technical paint on the top, I try to avoid putting technical paint on the rim because they're all water-based. Okay, my camera has just died on me, so I guess that is the end of the stream. So, I'll quickly switch to the overlay and I'll explain that thought. Won't even let me switch to the overlay, the camera's that dead. Okay, so the camera's died, so the screen is currently frozen. But because of this being a technical paint and also water-based, if you paint the edge with the technical paint, it's just going to rub off constantly and make your base look a bit rubbish. So you're better off going in as is and just going in with a different colour on the edge. But anyway, that will be it for today then, guys. Thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in. It's really, really appreciated. And I do really appreciate the support. I'll be back again tomorrow. Hopefully I sound a bit better by then. We will be continuing on with our other two Kurnoth Hunters in the same theme, but they are just ever so slightly different in figure, so they'll just look slightly different. But anyway, that'll be it from me tonight, guys. I hope you have a wonderful evening. Hope everybody is staying warm. And yeah, I'll see you guys tomorrow. Bye for now.